Chris Olave, wide receiver 25 last year, 72 receptions, 119 targets, 1,042 yards, 4 touchdowns, an average of 7.9 targets per game last season. Thoughts on Chris Olave?
Last year in the rookie class on this podcast, right?
Yes,
I told you guys that Olave was my pick to be the best receiver out of this group. Now, Garrett Wilson's doing wonderful things up there in New York. I commend him for what he's doing. I still think Olave is the best receiver out of the group. And they're old teammates. I mean, so it's kind of a fun little banter back and forth with them. Like, holy crap, you guys had this much talent at wide receiver, and there's zero to show for it down there in the horseshoe. So there's my dig at the Ohio State. Anyway, I like Chris Olave a lot. I think he's going to get peppered with targets. I could see him jump up into the top 12 for wide receivers this year in fantasy production. I think his ceiling is probably like wide receiver 7. I don't see him going necessarily any higher than that. But as long as Michael Thomas remains healthy and interested in football, I think that helps Chris Olave because Thomas in name alone will garner attention. And they will be forced to do that. Last year, Olave he was that by himself. There was no other option down there. You had Taysom Hill running him in for touchdowns. Kamara's not getting the ball thrown to him. You have, Jim, Jack, and Harry playing wide receiver for the Saints outside of Chris Olave, and they still couldn't stop the guy. I think he's going to have a great season, and he is a awesome, awesome pickup in the 3rd round of redrafts.
I don't want to sing the praises of Chris Olave because there's somebody on this podcast who traded him away in the home league.
Somebody else who acquired him in that same league.
Also that, and a series of unfortunate events, which is really just how I should label all of last year's fantasy football league in the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football League. Just a series of unfortunate events. So yeah, I was high on him last year. That's why I drafted him last year. And it turned into a desperation play where I needed to make a move to get another quarterback because I was an idiot. And just felt like that was my back was up against the wall. And in order to have some semblance of a decent season, I had to trade away Chris Olave and then watch him go do quite well down there in New Orleans. So yeah, I would like to think that what Kevin said is correct. That
Chris Olave coming off the board, wide receiver 14, kind of that 30th overall pick. So right there in the middle of the 3rd round, this is a guy that I think will absolutely outperform what he did in his rookie year. Will not surprise me to see him, I could very well see him get over 150 targets, go well north of 1,400 yards, and we probably see him get in the end zone 7-8 times. I think that this is a guy, Kevin, you kind of gave him a ceiling wide receiver, 7. I think that's probably a pretty good ceiling there. And I really could see him finishing somewhere in that kind of wide receiver 7 to 10 range. I think that's really where I'm going to kind of see him playing out there. So I think that Chris Olave has a very, very bright season ahead of him. And I think that we're going to be looking back on this one and go, man, this guy was a steal in the 3rd round.